So I wrote a post already about this, talking about the difference between making decisions based on fear and feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I feel like this is something I'm so well versed in, and I have actually started writing a book. And I think that this is like, I'm going to go into all of this stuff in detail in the book, but I do want to talk about this right now because I feel like it's important. I feel like a lot of people don't know how to discern kind of the difference between feeling the fear and doing it anyway and making decisions based on fear. There is a difference. There is a difference. Okay. So, from my own experience, lived, tried, true, trusted, all the rest of it, I have always been one of these people that has made sometimes what seems like utterly crazy decisions at certain points in my life, but actually decisions that were based on self-love and based on wanting to change things, improve things, create excitement, various different things. I've always had quite an adventurous nature, actually. If you look at some of the choices I've made over the decades, as it were, and some people would be like, oh my god, you're insane for having done that. You'll see the pattern with me. The feeling the fear and doing it anyway was, and actually still is, one of my things that I actually lead myself with. Hey Sharon darling, how you doing? And the thing is, like, when I've made decisions that are based on feeling the fear and do it anyway, the decisions haven't been based on fear. The decisions have actually been based on self-love, on wanting to create a change out of boredom, restlessness, fuck this shitness. Quite often there's been an awful lot of fuck this shit in my life that has prompted me to make really what I would call bold moves, but I was never making these moves because I was scared of scared that if I didn't make the move that something would happen. I've always made the moves out of this knowing that I had to take the leap into something that felt right for me, because in actual fact staying where I was would have been fear-based. Does this make any sense? So to stay in the position that I was in would have been based on fear, and in actual fact what I needed to do was face that fear, basically face the fear of change to make the move. Whereas there have been times where I have made decisions not out of fear of staying where I was, but actually because I had fear triggered in me by, for example, I was talking about this yesterday, I've had fear triggered, like when you see coaches etc. online who use fear as a motivational factor to get people to buy from them, I have been presented with that at times where I've been a bit frustrated, and I've ended up looking at stuff that they were saying, and like my decision to leap wasn't based on an internal like self-love or whatever. It was based on a fear of like, if I don't work with this person, then my life's going to go to shit. And in actual fact that's ended up then creating what I would refer to as karma drama, because the decision to work with them wasn't based on inner divine guidance and love. It's been based on fear of missing out. Does this make sense? So it's like it's the difference between making a decision based on FOMO, which everyone's familiar with FOMO, like that whole thing of like, I have to do this otherwise I'll miss out, basically, and if I miss out then, you know, you start to drill down into like the reasons why you might feel like you're missing out, and it's usually to do with feeling like people won't think you're good enough, there's so many kind of like drivers for this stuff. And I think it's really a lot of my work, I would say, is about drilling down into what's going on behind what's going on the surface. And actually, like, when you can understand what's driving you emotionally to make your decisions, it puts you in a position to make better decisions for yourself, rather than decisions that are ultimately going to end up just creating more of the energy that you're making them from. So if you're making a decision from FOMO, basically what happens is you end up generating more fear as a result of creating momentum in the direction of that fear. You know, energy basically ends up sort of kind of picking up a level of velocity on itself when you're making a decision based on fear. Okay, so for example, that like if you're making a decision based on fear of change, so you end up stuck in a rut, you create more fear of change. Like it sort of self-perpetuates itself, you know, and you can equate it to self-sabotage. And it's the same thing if you make a decision to work with someone or do something, or you know, it could be anything. Go on a diet, like any kind of thing. If the sponsoring energy behind that decision is actually fear, so you're doing it because you're scared. So you're working with this person because they presented a shiny object to you, but you can feel on some level that it's not right for you, but you end up being persuaded into it. But in actual fact, your inner guidance isn't actually telling you to go in that direction, but you allow yourself to be led in that direction anyway, then you end up creating more of the same shit, basically. I've done this a number of times. But I'd say kind of a large amount of the investments that I've made in myself from the point of view of working with other people, in the coaching etc. sphere, have been prompted because the person that I was dealing with had managed to tap into my fears, and I was making the decisions based on those fears. And what happens when you do that, because actually fear is something that exists from in your, like what we call your shadow. Okay, when you make decisions from your shadow that are fear based, what happens is you end up engaging on the shadow side with the shadow of the person that you're working with, and it, generally speaking, doesn't tend to end up with good results for either of you. And so it's really, 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 really important to be able to actually be in touch enough with your own feelings and your own emotional responses to understand what it is that's driving you to want to work with someone. Is it because you're actually feeling guided, divinely guided, from a state of love and a feeling of connection and resonance, like loving resonance with that person, to want to work with them? And I'm going to go through again how you muscle test on this. Or are you being triggered into buying from them or making the decision, whatever the fuck it is, out of fear that some things might go horribly wrong if you don't? Does this make sense to you? You know, so you've got to understand, like, what are your motivating factors, what are your driving factors. And I'll go back to this whole thing with muscle testing. I muscle test like this. You can sway test as well. I could try and stand up and demonstrate the sway test. I can't really be arsed, basically. There's not quite enough room. It all gets a bit ungainly when I try and sort of cantilever myself out from behind this desk, because the bed's literally right behind me, so it's like a bit of a shuffle. But you can sway test or you can muscle test, and I'm like, if I'm well hydrated, so it's like, yes, no, yes, no. Okay, this is how I muscle test it. Some people do the finger thing differently and they kind of do this business, but I don't do that. Okay, so you can literally muscle test on whether something, basically on something being a blessing for you or a lesson for you. And that is your quickest and easiest way to discern, in actual fact, what your motivating force is. Because if you're making the decision based on love, it's going to be a blessing. If you're making the decision based on fear and it's not actually divinely guided, it's not like, even though you might be thinking it is because they're saying all the right words and da 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 da, and they've managed to like trigger a level of fear in you with some of the things that are coming out of their mouth or in their copy or whatever, then it's going to be a lesson of some sort, probably both for you and for them. So you can literally, with this karma stuff, like the literal definition of karma, you create your own karma. It's the law of cause and effect. Contrary to a lot of popular opinion, past life karma is actually a bullshit. I could talk about that at length in other thingies. Basically, this whole idea of karmic debt that goes over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes is actually bollocks. It's something that has been played on by non-physical beings in order to move human beings around the chessboard like chess pieces and kind of siphon their energy and so on and so forth. The bottom line is the law of cause and effect, which is, you know, what we interpret as the law of karma, is you get what you believe. Okay, you get what you believe, you get what you are. Okay, when I'm talking about what you are, it's on the level of coding and programming. So if you are making a decision based on fear, and it's coming from fear, you will get more of that. That's the effect coming from the cause. Make a decision based on fear, get more fear, get more reasons to be in fear fed back at you. It's like a bounce back, basically. Make a decision based on love, self-love. You can make decisions based on love for other people too, but there needs to be a level of self-love in there as well. Make a decision based on self-sacrifice. You can end up with more of that shit. You know, I've played this every which way. I understand what I'm talking about here because I have put myself, I think, on some level, I think as a soul, I've put myself in these situations every which way so I could have the wisdom, the experience of understanding it, having kind of gone through the experiences and being able to look back afterwards and use hindsight and go, so that's how that works. You know, sometimes at the time I was just like, why the fuck am I doing this to myself? Do you know what I mean? It's quite easy to kind of get caught up in beating yourself up about some of the decisions you made, but at the end of the day, every single experience you have gives you a level of wisdom. Now, if you can drill down into exactly what it is that you learned from these lesson experiences, then they do end up being a kind of backhanded blessing. But, you know, I'm here to say you can make it easier for yourself. You can make it easier for yourself by actually getting acquainted with what's going on underneath the surface with your decision making process. Is your decision coming from love, or is it coming from fear? Is it coming from self-love? What's the main energy behind it? You know, and you can muscle test your way through if you're not sure. So many people, as I was saying yesterday, so many people on this planet are really emotionally incoherent because we are taught to be afraid of our emotions, afraid of our feelings. We're not taught how to process them properly. We're not taught how to self-regulate. And it causes all sorts of shit. It causes all sorts of shit because then a lot of the time we don't know what our motivation is for doing things. So many people are sort of stuck in survival mode and then making decisions from survival mode, which is always fear-based. You know, if you're stuck in survival mode and you're making decisions from survival mode, you keep perpetuating that cycle. So you're constantly jamming yourself into the sympathetic nervous system, which is all about fight, flight, right? Rather than rest and digest. Rest and digest is like when you're feeling calm and lovely and you're at peace with the world, that's rest and digest, basically. That's your parasympathetic nervous system in action. Okay. You have physical responses to stimuli, to data that is around you. Most people aren't very good at working out what it is that they're feeling as a response to stuff because we've been taught to numb ourselves. You know, people numb out through drinking, they take drugs, they, you know, do all sorts of things, and there's nothing wrong with a little bit of escapism, but if it's a perpetual state that you're in, it's because you're numbing what's going on with your nervous system because you're not dealing with it, which means that you are then disconnected from your emotional responses to stuff, which means that it's very difficult for you to make good decisions that are actually in your highest interests. So it's kind of important to like peel all this stuff back. And whilst I'm not a sobriety coach by any means, it is very, very important also to discern like what are the triggers for you numbing yourself in different ways, and you know, looking at dealing with that so that you can actually become more intimate with who you are as a person, rather than constantly creating this sort of distance between you and yourself. Like, at the end of the day, you've got to live with yourself in this lifetime. So if you're constantly numbing yourself out with all of these different things, it's like you're missing the ability to really kind of be intimate with yourself and then make decisions from your inner guidance rather than your inner critic. We come back to this whole thing of, you know, being able to actually discern what is intuition and what is fear. Okay, where have I numbed myself out? Where am I basing my decisions on fear? Like, what does a love-based decision feel like for me? You can drill down into that. It's a really fucking useful thing to do. What does it feel like? What does it feel like for me when I make a decision based purely on self-love and joy? Okay, what are the things that actually, you know, where's my joy at? Like the actual joy, not the numbed out joy, not the escapist joy, but like when I'm fully in my body and I'm fully grounded, what are the things that literally feel like a beautiful harmony to me, to my body, so on and so forth? And you know, we come back to this thing of like, we can't spend our lives in a disconnected manner, disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from others, and so on and so forth, and expect to make really good self-nourishing choices and decisions, because how the fuck are you supposed to make a good self-nourishing choice or decision when you don't even know what you want, and you have no like connection to what's motivating you, because you're constantly like breaking your connection with yourself through self-medicating in ways that aren't helpful. Okay, and I think, you know, this is probably like, let's say, the live stream for the age now. It sounds a bit grandiose, but you can understand what I'm saying here with this. It's just super important to really understand what is driving your decisions. You know, when you make a decision based on fear, you are creating a lesson for yourself and whoever else is involved in that decision. When you make a decision based on love, you are like actual, like what I'm going to call divine, unconditional love for yourself and others. You are making a decision based on divine truth. And obviously with all of that, you have to, like, light comes into it because light is information. Light is basically a whole bunch of information. Photons contain huge amounts of information. If you look at the kind of the quantum analysis of how the universe works, there's a lot of stuff to do with quantum packets and the fact that we're interpreting the data within them all the time. Okay, you look at this massive holographic universe that we live in and the way that it works. Photons are light energy. Light energy contains a lot of data. Our DNA processes light energy when it's working properly, and we are able to make decisions provided our coding and our programming and so on and so forth is up to the job and isn't causing distortion. So, you know, you can create a lot of distortions in your own reality because your coding and your programming and so on and so forth is distorted, is dysfunctional, is inorganic, and so on and so forth. And this is stuff that I go into in the Quantum Creation Mastermind group. But, you know, I'm just going to drill it back to this. Like, whenever you're making a decision, before you get caught up in people throwing fear at you about what might happen if you don't, and always check in with yourself. It doesn't matter what anyone else is saying to you. You check in with yourself first. So you can muscle test, you can meditate on it, you know, take your time over making decisions that hey Diane. Oh, I love it. Somehow you're awake to catch this. Yeah, talking about, you know, we come back to that old chestnut, love over fear, but like, it's so important to, like, I feel like I'm saying this stuff because I've been through making decisions based on fear, making decisions based on love. I used to be really good at making decisions based on love. Ironically, it was when I started working with energy that I got more foggy with this stuff, because when I started working with energy with other people, it brought up all of my own stuff to do with where I'd cut myself off from all of my magic when I was younger, and there was all stuff to do with my upbringing, my mum, and blah, 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 all of this stuff. Okay, so, you know, anyone who works with energy will always have to work with themselves as being a priority, regardless of what they're doing with other people. And I do always prioritize doing my own work on myself before anything else. You know, that to me is absolutely fucking paramount. Being able to kind of understand, being able to feel into yourself and like, what is like, am I in alignment with what I desire? What's good? Like, if I'm not in alignment, what's going on? Okay, what do I need to adjust? You know, where am I holding on to things that actually aren't aligned for me, just because I've got an attachment to them based on a past trauma or whatever the fuck it is. Okay, there's so many things that you can drill down into. But, you know, the bottom line of everything is that all karma drama, i.e. negative karma, comes from making decisions based on fear, based on FOMO, based on all of that kind of shit, based on being, you know, based on people throwing shiny objects at you and saying, oh, you have to do this, otherwise, you know. I've seen people, and I'm sure everyone who watches this video will be able to kind of recognize this. I have seen people who coach, etc., online, turning around and saying, if you want to get clients, you have to tell them that if they don't work with you, you know, they will never go anywhere and they'll never achieve what they want. Da 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 da. That's fear-based selling. You know, I've seen so much of this shit. Like, and it's so easy to pick out when you know what you're looking at. Some people are a bit more subtle with it. A lot of people that are doing this stuff aren't even aware of the fact that they're doing it, because, again, you come back to this thing, they're so cut off from how they're feeling, and they haven't kind of sat down and worked out kind of what their value system is. I think it's important to have a value system. It's important to actually understand what it is that you want to actually create and encouraging people. Do you want to create people being more loving, and, you know, do you want to encourage, or do you want to hold a fucking stick of fear over their head and try and control them that way? That's essentially kind of what we're looking at here. You know, are you trying to beat people into submission by throwing fear at them so that you get what you want? Are you using emotional manipulation to get what you want? Or are you coming from a place of actual, much as I don't like this word particularly because it's too close to servitude, are you coming from a place of genuine heart-based service, and coming from a place of, I want to do what I love, and I also want to be able to share that with you so that you succeed? You know, that's what I call heart-based service. Heart-based service isn't, I'm going to do something I hate because it's going to benefit you, and it's going to feel horrible for me, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's bullshit. Heart-based service is, I'm going to do the thing that I absolutely love and I'm brilliant at and I shine at, and you're going to get to benefit from that, and I'm going to get to watch you blossom and grow as a result of that fucking resonant connection that we have, basically like tending a flower in a garden. And that's, you know, and then it becomes win-win for everyone, because basically what happens is they blossom as a result, and you basically end up kind of going, oh wow, I help them on their journey to actually kind of realizing their potential, which feels really fucking good, you know. So it's like you end up with a resonant feedback situation where everyone's like, yay, this feels amazing. It feels really like, it feels wonderful to do work like that. That's what I would call heart-based service work. If it feels exhausting, if it feels tiring, if it feels like, oh God, I'm good at it, and I've talked about this in another live stream, you know, this is the thing that I'm good at, but I don't actually enjoy it, but I'm doing it anyway. You know, like, if you don't enjoy it, then don't fucking do it. There's something else that's better for you to actually be doing in terms of an action. You know, go where the joy is in terms of your action, because actually if you have genuine joy in the actions that you're taking and other people benefit from that, It does. It creates, like, basically everyone's vibrations, etc., frequencies get higher as a result, and it becomes a self-perpetuating kind of feedback loop, as it were, that elevates everybody concerned. When you're doing when you're doing stuff and there's like, oh, this grungy energy involved, that ends up creating what I call a downward spiral feedback loop where everyone definitely doesn't benefit. Okay, so you could equate that to kind of diving in and trying to rescue people. That whole kind of the victim villain rescuer dynamic usually creates a downward spiral, because everyone who's involved in it has a level of fear going on, which is what's prompting their actions in the first place. And that's, basic definition of karma drama. And emotional self-sabotage cycles, creating downward spirals. You can spiral up, you can spiral down. Which way are you going to spiral? Upwards? Downwards? It's your choice always. But in order to be able to control which way you're spiraling, first you have to understand where you're at with something before you make a decision. Is this going to downward spiral me, or is this going to upward spiral me? Down, up. Which would you rather? Would you rather go down? Would you rather go up? Maybe you want to play down in the underworld for a bit. It can have its own kind of interesting lessons doing that stuff. But yeah, ultimately, knowing thyself. The one bit from the Bible that I always come back to. I'm not a Bible basher in any way, shape, or form. I don't hold with organised religion. I don't hold with New Age spirituality, any of that shit. But what I will say is there are some quotes in the Bible that are really fucking pertinent. Know thyself. Most important thing you can do, know thyself. Knowing thyself means knowing thy feelings, being able to feel thy feelings, and actually being able to make judgment calls based on knowing those feelings and actually knowing them deeply and knowing what's right at the bottom of everything. If you read Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh talks about this. I'm like paraphrasing here, but like, in the words of Source, I am the thought behind your highest thought, your finest feeling. Basically, pure divine love, most powerful force in the fucking universe. Is it coming from that, or is it coming from the illusion of fear? And fear is an illusion, but it's a really good self-perpetuating one, basically. Is the decision you're making going to help you understand yourself more from a position of elevating your frequency and making you really be able to kind of like coherently integrate with your own divinity, or is it going to send you spiraling away from it into some kind of situation, essentially? Because you are divine. Divine creates, and you can create in all directions. You have that freedom, basically. But it starts with knowing what's driving your decision making. What are your drivers? So yes, but yeah, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. If what's behind your decision to do something is love and curiosity and adventure, then there might be some fear that comes up, and that's when you feel the fear and do it anyway. And every time I've done that, it's worked out in my favour. For example, when I quit working for Thrasher Group and I didn't have a job to go to, and I quit anyway because I felt stagnant as shit and I couldn't stay there. I was just like, if I'd have stayed there, it would have been for safety rather than anything else. And the desire for safety is a fear of the unknown, right? So I leapt, and then I landed myself a job at Avery's, where I worked very happily for 5 years. At the point where I was stagnating at Avery's, I did the whole fucking thing again, and I ended up becoming a cam girl, which some people thought was the craziest decision in the world. But I just knew that I couldn't stay there. I felt like I was dying inside, basically, and I just had to get out, and I didn't know if it would work out. When I started camming, I didn't know whether I'd like it. I just thought fuck it, I'm going to try it, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway. I didn't have any fear of it as such. I was just like, you know, what have I got to lose at the end of the day? I wanted to work for myself. I wanted, you know, I wanted to be able to spend more time with my son. So I jumped out of the job that was basically kind of made me, had gotten to the point where it made me feel like I was dying inside. And I gave myself a month of just titting around because I was put on garden leave as soon as I quit. So I had a month's pay. And then I just launched myself into it. And it actually turned out it was a really fucking good decision at the time. Everyone thought I was nuts. Literally everyone thought I was nuts. Boyfriend at the time thought I was nuts. Everybody thought I was absolutely fucking insane for, it's like, you're going to be naked on the internet? What the fuck are you thinking? Yeah, I did that. Zero regrets. Basically. And then at the point where that stopped feeling joyful to me and I felt stagnant, I leapt again. And each time I leapt, it was because there was something that was calling me. It wasn't because I was scared. I was being pulled by my heart into something else. And I followed that calling, which did involve facing my fear, you know, facing fear of being broke, facing fear of being ostracized, you know, every time facing fear of something. But that I wasn't making the decision based on fear. That's the important distinction with all of this stuff. I was never making the decision based on fear. When I went to Mallorca, again, I went out of love. It was actually more out of love for wanting out to spend more time with his kids. As we all know, that didn't quite work out the way we planned. There's, you know, I could analyse that one into the ground. As it is, you know, I've put all of that stuff to bed now, thank fuck. It's taken me quite a while to puzzle out my feelings about that one because of everything that transpired whilst I was there. But the bottom line is that when I came back to the UK, again, I did it out of love. And when we moved to Hove, again, I did it out of love. Turned out to be a really fucking good decision. All my people are here. I say all my people. All of my people that aren't global, like dotted around all over the place. All of my kind of, let's say like my UK people that I really fucking connect with, they all seem to be here. I was definitely pulled to the right place. But yeah, I didn't move to Hove because I was scared of you know, I was scared of what would happen if I didn't, if that makes any sense. It was more a case of I need to be by the sea. I feel the love of the sea. I was pulled to the sea. Much as I love Bristol and the harbour and stuff, it's not having the sea on your doorstep. And I've just always felt a connection to here. So yeah, take some kind of, I don't know, understanding from the things I've been through so that it can help you to make decisions, like, and actually understand that it is important that you understand what the motivators are for your decision making. Something I've learned very well. And I will just add in as my kind of ending gambit, the offer on the Creative and Business Intuition Mastermind still stands. Masterclass, sorry. I will find the coupon code, she says. Right, and stick it in the comments. $44 rather than $444. Voila. If you're not very good with your intuition and you want to get better, this is, I obviously created this for those of you who have that issue. I created it a while ago. It's on offer. The link is there. Those of you watching this who need it, just muscle test on doing this is a blessing for me. Doing this is a lesson for me. If you get blessing, buy it. If you get lesson, don't buy it. Really simple. Yeah, with regard to relationships, you can't seem to sort out where that line is. Yeah, well, I think a lot of us have issues around this because of patriarchal conditioning and stuff we went through as kids and bloody blah. You know, this is kind of, that's where it gets interesting for most of us. But also, you know, we come back to this thing of like, are you owning your creative power or not? You know, and this is what I go into the Quantum Creation Mastermind, is actually delving into kind of helping people to connect with their actual creative power properly. And connecting with your creative power properly also includes learning how to deal with misalignments, learning how to align yourself with what you want, learning how to, learning how to rearrange the matrix, basically, in ways that are, I'm going to say, divinely aligned for you. Divine alignment, and I'm going to say ego-based alignment. Ego-based alignment isn't always necessary. Like, usually if a decision is coming from your ego, there's a level of fear involved, which will always create a lesson. We come back to that thing again. If it's coming in pure, as it were, then there won't be a lesson in there. It'll be a blessing, essentially. So, it's that whole thing of like, what is it? Working out what's aligned for you, and then working out where you're out of alignment with it. Because just because something's divinely aligned for you doesn't mean to say you're necessarily in alignment with it. Because we carry so many layers and levels of conditioning and all the rest of that shit, basically. As I well know from my own experience, picking through childhood stuff and all the rest of it. And my mission with everything has always been to like understand what's going on, also make dealing with it like fast and efficient. It's not quick fix as such, but it is, I've always been obsessed with, this can be faster, this can be more efficient. Like, my whole process as it develops is about doing that. How can I make it faster? How can I make it more efficient? How can I be like more precise with what I'm doing, so that everything that needs dealing with, and oddly enough, during my explorations of all of this over the past few years, I have managed to suss some stuff out about the Matrix, which is rather interesting, which is obviously what I share in the Quantum Creation Mastermind with the people that are in there. In terms of how to work with it so that you can be fast and thorough and change shit around and really like properly clear stuff up for good, which is I say, actually working with the masculine energy, which is logical and does seek to understand, and the feminine. In actual fact, when the feminine and the masculine are working together, what happens is the feminine wants to get something done and asks the masculine to figure out how. So the logical part does come into it sometimes. You can be as nebulous and fucking wafty as you like. Generally speaking, though, you tend to, I have found that it's really fucking useful to be able to explain what you do to people in a way that doesn't leave them scratching their heads looking really puzzled. At the same time, that has been probably one of my biggest kind of stumbling blocks over the years, is like being able to do that. Because when I first started, I've always had this ability to work with energy and sort stuff out for people, sort stuff out for other people whilst not sorting stuff out for myself. That's been one of the interesting things I've had to deal with. Like delving into working on myself has been like the biggest lesson for me in terms of self-discovery and figuring out why I was blocking myself and what was going on and all of that stuff. Looking at, working with someone and them coming back and going, oh my God, all this happened, it's all amazing and and I'm like, why can't I get those fucking results for myself? Be honest, there have been times where I've been really frustrated with myself. At the same time, I also understand that in order for me to be able to teach this stuff to people, I had to have that understanding, which meant that, if I'd have just been able to wave the magic wand over myself that I did over other people, then I wouldn't have had that impetus to learn or to be able to kind of teach other people about it. This makes sense. So there's always been a gift in all of this stuff I've put myself through, which has been quite funny. So yeah. Having said all of that, I do feel like I've rambled on enough, I think, to really push my point home here, that like understanding the motivations for your decisions is so fucking important, and I can't press that home enough. That whole know thyself thing. If you want to get to know yourself and you want to come and join us in the Quantum Creation Mastermind, obviously you're very welcome to. You can message me about it to ask me about it. You can go straight to https://dynamicintention.podia.com and read about it. There are different options for joining. We've got a 12-month, there's a 6-month, or there's, yeah, basically. So there's different options available. The key point of all of this is, you know, we come back to that thing again. If you are drawn to it, blessing or lesson, blessing or lesson. Is it a blessing for you? Is it a lesson for you? I will say right now, if someone joined and I was getting that it was going to be a lesson for both of us rather than a blessing, I would probably tell them that I would, you know, I'd be there going, I'll refund your money, but this isn't for you. And I'm getting that really strong and loud and clear, because from my point of view, I want everyone who's in there to be in integrity with their own, you know, their own greatest and highest good. And I want to be in integrity with my own greatest and highest good. I want everyone to, we talk about the spiral, I want everyone to be able to spiral up from it rather than any of the opposite. You know, I don't want people coming into anything that I'm offering from a position of fear, in actual fact. Do it out of love for yourself. Sometimes you might have to deal with a bit of fear to take the leap, but don't make the decision to work with me or anyone out of fear. This is the lesson, so to speak. You know, bottom line of all of it. So, mwah. Bye for now, people. I think I've said all I need to say.